In 1947, a woman in Harlan County, Kentucky fed an entire family of 9 through the worst winter anyone could remember. She had no refrigerator, no grocery store within 40 miles, no money. What she had was a root cellar, a cast iron skillet that weighed more than her youngest child, and a memory full of recipes that no cookbook ever printed. Her neighbors called her Aunt Della, her grandchildren called her Maman, and the things she could do with a handful of wild greens, a bit of lard, and some cornmeal would make a modern chef with a culinary degree sit down and be quiet. One of those recipes is number 7 on this list. You have probably walked past the main ingredient 1,000 times without knowing it could save a meal, or maybe even a life. In 1963, a folklore researcher from the University of Virginia drove through the hollers of southern West Virginia with a tape recorder and a notebook. Over 3 months, she documented 214 recipes from women over the age of 70. Recipes for breads that required no yeast, preserves made from fruits most Americans have never heard of, soups that could bring a fever down and put weight on a sick child in the same week. She submitted her research. It was filed, it was forgotten, and one by one, every woman she interviewed passed away. Most of those recipes exist now only on magnetic tape that no one has played in 60 years. This is not just a list. This is a rescue mission. Number 19 uses a common backyard plant that a recent study proved works exactly the way grandmothers said it did for 200 years. Number 6 was so good that a food company in Nashville tried to turn it into a product in 1951. The grandmothers who had been making it for free since before the Civil War were never mentioned. And number 2 requires no special ingredients at all, just your hands, some patience, and a technique so old it does not have a name in any cookbook. Let us start. Number 25, leather britches. If you did not grow up in the mountains, you have probably never heard this term. Leather britches are dried green beans, not dehydrated in a machine. These beans were threaded onto a long string with a sewing needle, hung from the rafters of a porch, and left to dry in the open air for weeks. They turned dark, leathery, and shrank down to almost nothing. They lasted all winter without refrigeration. When you were ready to cook them, you soaked them overnight and simmered them low and slow with a ham hock or fatback. What came out tasted nothing like the green beans you know. Deeper, smokier, almost meaty. A food scientist at Virginia Tech found that slow air drying actually increased certain savory compounds, the same ones the Japanese identified as umami. Those grandmothers did not know the word umami. They just knew that hanging beans on the porch made winter taste better. Now almost nobody does it anymore. The strings are gone from the porches, and a flavor that fed Appalachia for 2 centuries is almost extinct. Number 24, stack cake. This was not just a recipe, this was a community. In the mountains, a wedding cake was not bought, it was built. Every woman invited to the wedding baked one thin layer and brought it. The bride's mother stacked them together with filling made from dried apples cooked down into a thick, spiced paste. The more layers, the more loved the bride. A poor bride might have 4. A well-loved bride might have 12. The apple filling soaked into the layers overnight, and by morning, the whole thing had fused into something dense, moist, and impossible to describe. It tasted like cinnamon and devotion. The stack cake required a community to make. You could not do it alone. It was designed that way. And when the communities hollowed out, when young people left for cities, the stack cake disappeared. Not because the recipe was lost, because the way of life that made it possible was lost. Number 23, poke salad. Pokeweed is toxic if you do not know what you are doing. The grandmothers knew what they were doing. They picked the young leaves in early spring before the stems turned red. They boiled those leaves 3 separate times, pouring off the water each time. 3 full boils, 3 full rinses. Then they fried the greens in bacon grease with a little onion. What you got tasted like a cross between spinach and asparagus, with a faint bitterness that made your mouth wake up. Poke salad was free food. It grew in every ditch, every fence row. During the Depression, entire communities survived on poke salad and cornbread. A 2018 analysis found that poke greens, properly prepared, are remarkably high in vitamins A and C. The grandmothers did not need a study. They watched their children's skin clear up every spring when the poke came in. They called it a spring tonic. Science is still catching up. Number 22. Cornmeal mush, maybe the simplest recipe on this list. Cornmeal, water, salt, a pot. You stirred the cornmeal into boiling salted water slowly until it thickened into something like porridge. You ate it hot with butter and maybe a drizzle of sorghum molasses. But whatever was left, you poured into a loaf pan and let it set overnight. In the morning, you sliced it, fried the slices in lard until they were golden and crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside, and you had a second meal from the same ingredients. Nothing was wasted. The grandmothers understood something our modern world has forgotten. A recipe is not just what you eat right now. A recipe is also what you eat tomorrow. That is not poverty. That is genius. Number 21. Ramp and potato soup. If you are not from Appalachia, you might not know what a ramp is. It is a wild leek that grows in shaded forests in early spring and smells like garlic and onion had a baby, and that baby decided to be loud about it. Schools used to send children home if they came in smelling like ramps, but when you cook them slowly with potatoes and a bit of cream, the harshness fades. What is left is a deep, sweet, almost nutty flavor that no cultivated onion can match. After a long winter of dried beans and preserved food, bodies were starved for fresh nutrients. Ramps are loaded with vitamin C. The soup was medicine disguised as comfort. Now ramps are a trendy ingredient in high-end restaurants, where a small plate of ramp butter costs $18. The grandmothers had it for free by the bucketful and shared it with anyone who was hungry. Number 20. Persimmon pudding. Not the big orange persimmons from the grocery store. The Appalachian grandmothers used the small, wild American persimmon. You had to wait until after the first hard frost. Before the frost, one bite would turn your mouth inside out. After the frost, they became soft and sweet and almost honey-like. The grandmothers pressed the pulp through a colander, mixed it with eggs, milk, sugar, and a little flour. The result was something between a custard and a cake. Dense, dark, sweet. It tasted like autumn distilled into a dish. Wild persimmons are still out there. They still drop from the trees every October, but almost no one picks them. They fall and rot on the ground while we drive to the store and buy desserts wrapped in plastic that taste like nothing and cost $7. You need to understand something about the women who kept these recipes alive. They were called granny women. A granny woman was not just a grandmother who could cook. She was the most important person in her community, the healer, the midwife, the keeper of every recipe and remedy that kept people alive where there was no doctor, no hospital, no pharmacy within a day's ride. And she fed people, not just their bodies. When a family lost a father in a mining accident, the granny woman was the first one at the door with a pot of soup. When a child would not eat because grief had taken their hunger, the granny woman knew exactly which dish to make. Something warm, something simple, something that smelled like safety. She did not charge money. If you could pay, you paid in kind. A dozen eggs, help with the ploughing. If you could not pay, you did not pay. Nobody kept a ledger. This system held Appalachian communities together for 150 years. It worked because one woman in every hollow decided that keeping others alive was her life's work, and she did it for free. Remember that. Number 19. Sassafras tea. Your grandmother probably made this. You dug up sassafras roots in the spring, scrubbed them clean, and boiled them until the water turned a deep reddish brown. The smell was unmistakable. It was root beer. Because root beer was originally made from sassafras, that is not a coincidence. That is a theft. The grandmothers drank sassafras tea for centuries as a spring blood purifier. Modern research found that sassafras root bark contains compounds with legitimate anti-inflammatory properties. The FDA restricted sassafras oil in the 1960s. The grandmothers, who had been drinking a cup each spring for generations, were never consulted, and a tea that connected families to the forest, to the seasons, to each other, was replaced by a can of chemicals that tastes like a memory of something real. Number 18. killed lettuce. The name sounds alarming, but nobody is being harmed. This is a spring salad. Tender leaf lettuce torn into a big bowl. You fried bacon until crisp, then poured the hot grease and crumbled bacon directly over the lettuce. The heat wilted the leaves just enough to make them silky. Then a splash of apple cider vinegar into the hot pan. Let it sizzle. Poured that over too. A little salt. A little sugar. Maybe some sliced green onions. You ate it immediately while still warm. The combination of tender greens, smoky fat, and sharp vinegar created what modern food science would call a perfectly balanced flavor profile. The grandmothers called it supper. Number 17. Soup beans and cornbread. This might be the most important meal in Appalachian history. Pinto beans slow-cooked all day with a ham bone. Cornbread baked in a cast-iron skillet. The bottom crust golden from the hot grease. This meal fed more families through more hard times than any government program ever did. A bag of dried pintos and a sack of cornmeal could feed a family of 6 for a week. The grandmothers knew what modern nutrition now confirms. Beans and corn together form a complete protein. They figured that out not in a laboratory, but at a kitchen table where hungry children sat waiting. And the pot liquor, that thick broth at the bottom of the bean pot, was never thrown away. It was soaked up with cornbread, or saved as the base for tomorrow's soup. Nothing was wasted. Not ever. Number 16. Crackling bread. When a hog was slaughtered in the fall, the fat was rendered into lard. The little crispy bits left behind were cracklings. The grandmothers mixed them right into cornbread batter. Every bite had a pocket of salty, crunchy, porky richness. The original loaded bread, centuries before anyone put cheese and jalapenos in anything. Crackling bread was a lesson in resourcefulness. The idea that there is no such thing as waste. A pig's rendered fat becomes cooking fuel. The remnants become flavor. And the flavor becomes a memory that a 70-year-old man still tears up about when he describes the way his grandmother's kitchen smelled in November. Number 15. Shuck beans. The grandmothers layered green beans in a crock with salt, covered it, and let the beans ferment slowly. What they created, without knowing the word, was a lacto-fermented vegetable. The same process that makes kimchi and sauerkraut. The same process that modern gut health experts now charge consultations to explain. Those shuck beans were full of the probiotics that the wellness industry sells in capsules for $30 a bottle. The grandmothers gave them out freely at church suppers. Number 14. Fried apple pies. Not the thing from a fast food window. These were half-moon pies made with dried apple filling wrapped in thin pastry dough and fried in a skillet. The dough rolled so thin you could almost see through it. The filling was dried apples rehydrated and cooked down with cinnamon until thick and dark. Each pie crimped shut with a fork, fried in just enough lard to turn the crust golden. You ate them warm, standing in the kitchen, with apple juice running down your wrist. There is no factory that can replicate the experience of a fried apple pie made by someone who loves you. That is not sentimentality, that is a fact. Number 13. Chow chow. A relish made from the end of the garden. Whatever was left at the season's close. Green tomatoes, cabbage, onions, peppers, all chopped fine and cooked with vinegar, sugar, mustard seed, and turmeric. Every grandmother's recipe was different because every grandmother's garden was different. It was the original hot sauce of the mountains, and it was also the final act of the growing season. Making chow chow meant winter was coming, and every last vegetable, no matter how imperfect, would be saved, honored, and transformed into something that would bring flavor to the cold months ahead. Here is something most people do not know. Between 1940 and 1970, researchers from pharmaceutical and food companies traveled through Appalachia interviewing the grandmothers. They were polite. They asked detailed questions about preparation methods, ingredient ratios, and technique. They wrote everything down, and then they left. Many of those documented techniques later appeared in commercial food products, fermentation methods, preservation techniques, flavor combinations that became the basis for mass-produced condiments. The companies filed patents, they built brands, they made fortunes. And the grandmothers who developed these techniques over generations Passing them down voice to voice, hand to hand, they never saw a penny. Their names appear nowhere. They are listed in research papers, when they are listed at all, as anonymous informants. Women who held centuries of culinary knowledge, who could feed a family through a winter with almost nothing, reduced to a footnote without a name. The next time you buy a jar of something from a shelf and see a brand name on it, ask yourself where that recipe really came from. Number 12. Pawpaw custard. The pawpaw is the largest edible fruit native to North America. It tastes like a cross between banana and mango. It grows wild in eastern forests, and almost no one knows it exists. The grandmothers gathered pawpaws every September and mashed the pulp into a custard with eggs, cream, and vanilla. A dessert that tasted tropical despite growing in the same woods where deer slept. The pawpaw cannot be shipped. It bruises if you look at it wrong. It ripens in 48 hours and then it is gone. That is why the food industry ignored it. In a world that demands convenience, the pawpaw demands presence. Maybe that is why we forgot it. Number 11. Wilted greens with pot liquor. Turnip, mustard, collard, whatever the garden gave, cooked low and slow with a ham hock until the greens were tender and swimming in rich, smoky broth. That broth was the pot liquor, the most nutritious part of the meal. Modern analysis confirmed the grandmothers were right. The pot liquor contains water-soluble vitamins concentrated into a savory, mineral-rich liquid. They gave it to sick people, new mothers, children who needed building up. The wellness world now calls this bone broth and charges $12 a cup. The grandmothers had a word for people who would pay that. They did not say it in polite company. Number 10. Molasses stack cake cookies. Thin, chewy molasses cookies sandwiched with dried apple butter filling. Packed into lunch pails for men going into the coal mines. Dense, calorie-rich, able to survive a tin box carried underground for 10 hours. Not engineered in a laboratory. Engineered at a kitchen table by a woman who knew her husband needed something sweet and strong enough to get him through a shift that might kill him. Number 9. Ramp butter. Ramps chopped fine and worked into fresh butter with salt. Let it sit overnight so the flavors married. Spread on hot cornbread or biscuits the next morning, green flecked and pungent. High-end restaurants now sell ramp butter for $20 a jar. The grandmothers made it in April with wild ramps that cost nothing and butter they churned themselves. Number 8. Spice bush tea. Remember the opening, the tea that helped when the doctor gave up? This is it. Spice bush grows all over Appalachian forests. The grandmothers steeped twigs and berries into a tea that was aromatic and warming, tasting like something between allspice and sassafras. They used it for colds, fevers, stomach trouble, and sometimes just because it tasted good on a cold night. A university study found that spicebush contains compounds with antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. The grandmothers did not need a study. They just needed a kettle. Number 7. Hickory nut cake. This is the recipe from Aunt Della. She gathered and cracked hickory nuts by hand. The shells are like little stones. The nut meat is tiny, picked out with a pin. It took an entire afternoon to shell enough for one cake, but the flavor is unlike any other nut. Richer than pecan, more complex than walnut, almost buttery. She mixed those nuts into a simple butter cake and baked it in a wood stove. That cake fed 9 people through a week when there was nothing else, because Aunt Della knew that when the body is hungry, the soul is hungrier. A cake made with love and patience and nuts that took all day to crack feeds something that beans and bread cannot touch. Number 6. Sorghum candy. Sorghum molasses was the sweetener of Appalachia. Cheaper than sugar, richer in minerals and flavor. The grandmothers pulled sorghum candy like taffy, cooking it to the right temperature and stretching it until it turned golden and glossy. In 1951, a candy company in Nashville sent someone to the mountains to learn the technique. They watched a 70-year-old woman pull sorghum candy in her kitchen. They took notes. 6 months later, a new taffy product appeared on shelves across the Southeast. The old woman's name was not on the package. She continued making hers for free, wrapping each piece in wax paper for children at church. She never knew about the product. She made candy for the joy on a child's face, not for money. But someone made money from what she knew. Number 5. Wild berry shrub. A shrub is a drinking vinegar. Wild berries mashed with sugar, left to macerate, then mixed with apple cider vinegar. A sweet tart concentrate mixed with cold water. Refreshing and, though they did not know this word, probiotic. Wild berry shrubs are now a craft cocktail trend. Bartenders in Brooklyn charge $14 for a shrub spritzer. The grandmothers drank them on their porch after a day of canning. The recipe is the same. The pretension is new. There was a day, not a specific date, but a slow, quiet day that stretched across decades when the grandmothers stopped teaching. It did not happen because they forgot. It happened because the world told them they were wrong. Their daughters came home from town with canned goods and said, "Mama, you do not need to do all that anymore." Their granddaughters saw the mason jars and the crocks and the dried herbs hanging from the rafters and felt embarrassed. We are modern now. We do not need those old ways. And the grandmothers, who had kept families alive through the Depression, through wars, through winters that would crush you, they looked at their daughters and they stopped. Not because they agreed, but because the pain of being called backwards by the people you raised is a wound that does not heal. So they kept their recipes in their heads. They tended their gardens alone. They made their teas and preserves in quiet kitchens, and they waited for someone to ask. Most of the time, no one asked. And when they died, what they knew died with them. This is not ancient history. This happened in your family. If you are over 40, there was a woman in your life who knew things, who could walk into a bare kitchen and feed everyone, and you did not ask her to teach you. I did not ask mine. That is a weight I carry. I think you might carry it too. Number 4, soup from nothing. A recipe with no name and no fixed ingredients, called nothing soup or empty pot soup or just making do. A potato, an onion, a carrot that had gone soft, a handful of dried beans, a bone from last week's ham, water, salt. You put it all together and cooked it until it was something. And it always became something. Because the grandmothers understood a principle that every great chef knows but rarely admits. The recipe is not in the ingredients. The recipe is in the attention, the stirring, the tasting, the patience of standing over a pot and caring enough to make nothing into something. Number 3, bread baked in a wood stove. Not a recipe exactly, a skill. The grandmothers baked bread in wood-burning stoves where temperature was controlled, not by a dial, but by knowledge. They knew the oven was ready by holding their hand inside and counting. 20 count meant slow bread. 10 count meant biscuits. 5 was too hot. They adjusted heat by opening dampers, adding wood, rotating pans because they knew the hot spots the way you know the rooms in your house. No thermometer, no timer, just a woman and her stove and decades of knowledge in her hands. The bread had a crust that crackled when you broke it and a crumb so soft it could make you cry. No modern oven has replicated it because the bread was not made by temperature. It was made by relationship. Number 2, hand-worked biscuits. No rolling pin, no biscuit cutter, just hands. The grandmothers made biscuits by feel. They did not measure the flour. They scooped it and knew by the weight if it was right. They cut in the lard with their fingers until the texture felt like coarse meal. Added buttermilk until the dough felt right. Not wet, not dry. Right. Then they pinched off pieces and shaped each biscuit by hand, knowing by touch when it was the right thickness. No two were the same shape. Everyone was perfect. You cannot learn this from a cookbook. You learn it by standing next to someone and doing it 1,000 times until your hands know what your brain cannot explain. When the last woman who knows how to do it by feel is gone, no amount of tutorials will bring it back. You can watch the motions. You cannot feel what she feels. And the feeling is the recipe. Number 1, the full table. This is not a recipe. This is the thing every recipe on this list was in service of. Sunday dinner, Thanksgiving, any day when family was together and the table was covered end to end. Cornbread and biscuits, beans and greens, fried chicken and gravy, stack cake and fried pies, chow chow and pickled beets. Everything made from scratch. Everything made from almost nothing. Everything made with hands that had been working since before sunrise. The full table was not about abundance. It was about love made visible. Every dish was a sentence in a language the grandmothers spoke fluently, but never put into words. I see you. I know you are tired. I know the world is hard. Sit down, eat. You are safe here. That is what we lost. Not just recipes, not just techniques, not just flavors that will never touch our tongues again. We lost the language, the grandmother language, the one that spoke through food and said everything that mattered without ever saying a word. And the only way to get any of it back is to start now. Find the oldest person in your family, call them, visit them, ask them to show you, not tell you, show you. Stand next to them in the kitchen and watch their hands. Feel the dough, smell the steam, listen to the stories that come out while the beans are cooking. Because the recipes are not in the ingredients, they never were. They are in the space between the person who makes the food and the person who eats it. That space is called love, and it does not have a shelf life, but the people who carry it do.